Okay, the shir is Le'ili Nishmas Reb Shlomo Avram ben Michal HaKohen Olav HaShalom for his yard site tonight, Chaf El, I believe the 19th yard site. May it be Aliyas HaNashama for him and a schus for the entire family. Le'irichem Shalom Tevis. So we're going to go through the halachas of Rosh Hashanah, Ala Seder, whatever we managed to accomplish, Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. Right now we're starting the days of El, and we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. We finished the general stage of El, moving into the days from Chai El, which take us a more specific Cheshbon Nefesh closer to Rosh Hashanah. We're already in the days of Slichas. And Slichas is not a time of Cheshbon Nefesh, it's more of a time of preparation of Tshuva for Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe Menesichas says that we need to realize that at this stage, after all the days of El that we passed, and now that we're ready for almost finishing Slichas, we should appreciate the idea that really everything negative that could have happened, Chas Hashem, negative that Yid could have done is all gone. All our Vedas have been transformed to Zachias. And we should really focus not on the Avodah of Tshuva Hatah, but Tshuva Allah, the higher level of Tshuva, which is Dama Teich Simcha. So while, yes, it's important to do Tshuva, but the focus has to be a Tshuva Metoich Simcha, and Simcha helps schlep us out also from all our problems. So that's our focus in the days right now before Rosh Hashanah. This year, because Rosh Hashanah is on a Tuesday, so the parshas of Nitzavim Vayelech are split. This week is still going to be Parshas Nitzavim. Next week we're going to start doing Parshas Vayelech. A good way to remember that is there's a pasuk in Daniel which describes the meal that they were eating of the king's meal. The king's meal is referred to as pasbag. Pasbag is a word which means food. Hamelech. But the word bag is Beis Gimel, Monday, Tuesday. The 2 days of the week. The second day of the week is Beis, and the third day of the week is Gimel. Bag, pasbag Hamelech. Hamelech is Rosh Hashanah, the day when we crown Hashem as king. Whenever it's Bag Hamelech, whenever Rosh Hashanah is on Monday and Tuesday, pas, we split. Pas means to split. From the word pasois, oisa, pitiv, crumble it. And in fact, some Svarim give a bit of a poem to remember, mnemonic. Bag Hamelech, pas vayelech. When Hamelech is Bag, Beis Gimel, whenever Rosh Hashanah is on a Monday or Tuesday, then Nitzavim Vayelech is split. So we're doing Parshas Nitzavim. The last week of the year this year is going to be Nitzavim, and the next week is going to be Vayelech. I think, I didn't check this before the shir, as an interesting curiosity, that this past year we did not lane Vayelech ever. So you can always ask the question, which parsha sometimes do we not lane any time during the year? And Vayelech could be the case that in some years we end up doing the Vayelech the year before we did Vayelech before Rosh Hashanah, and the subsequent year is going to be after Rosh Hashanah, so we end up not doing Vayelech at all. This Shabbos is going to be the second Shabbos Slichas, because we can do another whole round of Slichas for 2 days, starting from this coming week, Sunday and Monday at Rosh Hashanah. It's going to be the last day that we're going to Shabbos. This Shabbos is going to be the last time we're doing Pirkei Avos. We wrap up our Pirkei Avos with Prakim Hey and Vav together. The fourth cycle of Pirkei Avos, fourth and last cycle of Pirkei Avos for this year. And after Rosh Hashanah, there's no Pirkei Avos at all. The days before Rosh Hashanah, the poskim say that people are supposed to prepare themselves, particularly the Shliach Tzibur, the Baal Tekeah, at least the last 3 days before Rosh Hashanah, make sure they're pure from any type of impurity, learn the tefillas, learn about how to do the tkiyas. Generally, it's a good idea for everybody to learn the tefillas of Rosh Hashanah, because some of those words, some of us might not know what they mean. The Chazan for sure has to learn the Pirush HaMilas. He has to understand what he's saying. A lot of the piyutim that we say in Rosh Hashanah are based on Medrash Chazal, and otherwise, without learning it, we won't necessarily understand it. But even those that are not Baal Tefillah, it's important to understand, because a machzor, reading from a machzor is good, you know the words, but for the Pirush, it's a difficult Pirush, it's important to learn. Today's in age, Baruch Hashem, we have translations, English, even Hebrew, because the piyutim are not a normal, traditional, classical Hebrew. So it's a good idea to look at those machzorim and understand what you're reading. And that's in the days of preparation before Rosh Hashanah, particularly the last 3 days, which starts from this Shabbos. Matzah Shabbos, this coming week, we're not going to be saying Vihinoyam and Va'ata Kaddish whenever we have a Yom Tov during the week, the Matzah Shabbos before, we don't say Vihinoyam, unless there's Sheishes, Yimei HaMaisa, 6 days of work. We ask a special bracha that the 6 days of work should be successful. Our work should be successful during the Vihinoyam. But if there's no a full week of work, then we don't say that Tefillah Vihinoyam. We eat Lava Malka, and we celebrate Sunday, the day of Slichas, Chav Chesel, and then the last day of Slichas, Erev Rosh Hashanah. Erev Rosh Hashanah has a special name. It's called Schor Bris, and the reason it's called Schor Bris because there's a particular piyut, a slicha, which starts with the words Zcher Bris. For some reason, it's not found in our slichas, but we still use the term Zcher Bris. That's the name of the day of Zcher Bris, that day that we say that particular slichas. And that night before Erev Rosh Hashanah, the Friedrich Rebbe says he remembers it was almost like a vachnach when he was a kid. He does not recall ever going to sleep the night of Rosh Hashanah from when he was 6 years old. It was a night people used to verbring the entire night, preparing for Yom Tov, knowing that the Eibush is going to definitely give us a proper ksivah chesima tova, l'shana tova mesuka. And Erev Rosh Hashanah itself, we say a larger amount of slichas, more than the traditional regular slichas. It's a longer slichas. To give, in terms of timing, if the normal slichas takes about a half an hour, this slichas will take about an hour. Erev Rosh Hashanah is Erev Yom Tov, so we don't say Tachlon. But in Slichas, it's still considered not yet morning, even if you're saying Slichas when it's already morning. The concept of the Slichas is associated to the night, and therefore during Slichas we say Tachlon. Tachlon for us in Slichas means Ashamnu Bagadnu, and also there's a chapter in Slichas which is representative of Tachlon, although our meaning is that we don't put our heads down. The chapter in Slichas, Vayomer David El God, which is a capital in Tehillim. That capital, some people usually say that for their regular Tachnan, we say a different capital in Tehillim for Tachnan, but we're saying it as a substitute for Tachnan. We will be saying in a Slichas, even if there's no Tachnan later during the day afterwards in Shachar, said Rosh Hashanah, regular Tachnan is not said. If there's no Tachnan, there's also no Lanatzeach Yancha, capital Chav, also no Tfil David after Asher Volatzin. So again, even though we're saying Slichas when it's already daytime, it's considered conceptually nighttime, and we're moving into day only when we start Shacharis. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, we don't blow shofar. A number of reasons, whether to confuse the Satan, to make a break between the optional, customary tkiyas and the obligatory, required, absolutely required tkiyas of Rosh Hashanah. Whatever the reason is, we do not blow shofar at Rosh Hashanah, including the night before Erev Rosh Hashanah. Generally, people don't blow shofar at night. People who need to learn and practice shofar, there's hatadim to do it privately, secretly in a closed room, but otherwise, normally shofar is not blown on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Erev Rosh Hashanah after davening, which was a bit of a shorter davening because, like we said, we don't have tachan, lamatzech, and tefillah David. There's a seder of hataras nadarim. Hataras nadarim should be said, Alter Rebbe writes in the siddur, before midday. Midday these days is about 1:45 over here in New York. So we should finish our davening and do hataras nadarim before chatzos. Al pi halacha, hataras nadarim annulment of vows requires 3 adults, 3 kosher men adults. It is our minig that we use a minyan. Alter Rebbe writes in the siddur, which toiv, it's a good idea to have an Eida Shlema, an entire community, a full community of 10 people. There are a number of reasons proposed for that. Whether because we want to annul vows that are said also in a dream, a vow that a person makes in a dream requires 10. Although, interestingly, we don't have the words bein b'chalaim in our Hataras Nadarim. The Rebbe connects the idea of 10 people for different together, all together. The idea of Achdes Yisrael, Atem Nitzav Mayom Kolchem. There are 10 different types of Jews, and they all unite together. And our Hataras Nadarim encompasses that idea. There's different approaches to this, whether the 10 people include the person that wants to annul his vow, or it's 10 besides for that person. And from the Rebbe's words, it appears that the idea is to have 10 plus. There's 10 people that are annulling our vows, and we stand in front of the 10 and ask for them to annul the vows. The person who's asking to be matir neder is the one that's standing. All the matirim are sitting. And like I mentioned, it could be done in 3. So if a person's in a place he doesn't have 10 people, then 3 people would work. But the custom asks us to do it with 10. It's important to make sure you understand what you're saying in Hataras Nadarim. It should be in a language you understand. It's not just a tefillah. It's actually asking for our vows to be annulled. If you don't understand the meaning of the words, it's a pointless exercise. Now, if you read the meaning of the words before and now you understand a general concept, you don't know every particular word in Hebrew that you're reading, that's perfectly fine. Children do not do Hataras Nadarim, although technically a child from when he's 12 years old, it's an age called Mufla Samech Leish, a boy I'm talking about, that's 12, starts already having his nedarim are considered a neder. For whatever reason, it's not exactly the same as a 13-year-old, but it starts already at that stage. The minig is not that 12-year-olds do hataras nadarim. That's not the kind of minig. A number of reasons provided for that. Women too, although all the halachos of nedarim apply to women just like for men, it is not the custom that women appoint their husband to be a shlich for them to do hataras nadarim. Women rely on the fact that during Kol Nidre we're going to make a statement about all the future vows. So every year during Kol Nidre we make for the entire year a statement for all future vows. And during Hatar Sodom we actually do both. Hatar Sodom we're annulling the past vows and we're making a statement about the future vows. We put a lot of emphasis on vows for the new year, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because vows, the simple explanation is because a neder is a very serious thing. If a person takes on a neder or makes a promise or whatever it is, then the consequences are extreme. And we want to come into the new year clean without this particular sin of nedarim, and therefore we put this emphasis on, that's the simple shot, why we put the emphasis on Atar Nedarim, which is why it's very important whenever you're taking on Achlata Toiva, whatever it is, you say Beli Neder. Any good thing, just say Beli Neder, shouldn't have the force of a vow. Now, according to Halacha, we don't know, according to Halacha, it's not so simple to rely on making a statement in the beginning of the year that all future vows will be annulled. You can rely on it only under certain conditions and only under great need. But and otherwise you mechuyev to keep your neder, and that's why you should say b'li neder. But here we're doing it as an extra measure, just as a sort of as a safety measure. If you know of a neder, if a person knows of a neder that they made and they cannot keep that neder, then it's supposed to go to a bezdin of three people that know the laws of nedarim. They're supposed to specify what the neder is. So in a Tarz Neder, we're not specifying. We say, I can't mention all the Nadarim that I've made. It could be way so many. I could have forgotten them. According to Allah, you're supposed to be Mefadat the Neder. Over here, it's a case where you don't know what the Nadarim are, so you have no choice. And therefore, we rely on that as sort of second to best. But when you do know the Neder, you're obligated to be Mefadat to specify the Neder. Not all three people sitting in this bezin have to know the Neder. The rabbi should know the neder, the reason why he made the neder, and the other two, as long could just join along as long as they understand what's going on, they could do the Hataras Nadarim. If you can't do Hataras Nadarim before Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, you could do it before Erev Rosh Hashanah, even earlier. Some people have the meaning they already start the Hataras Nadarim from Chaf Av, the Rebbe mentioned that. If a person didn't do any Hataras Nadarim, he could do it on Aseres Me'etshuva. And really, it could even be done after Aseres Me'etshuva, Shayne Rabbah, etc. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, let's talk about the preparations for Rosh Hashanah. On Erev Rosh Hashanah, the halacha is that one is not supposed to do bloodletting, which some people say blood testing is the same. Erev Shavuos, it's a sakana, but Chazal made a rule on every Erev Yom Tov not to do any type of blood work. So that shouldn't be done on Erev Yom Tov. We write a pan for ourselves and for our entire family, and we send the pan on the tzion. The minig is to go to a Beis HaKvaris and to daven for a good year, and to give tzedakah for aniyim. The Rebbe brings in Sefer HaManhagim that those who are close nearby go to the Tzion on Erev Rosh Hashanah. It is our custom that before we go to a kaver, general kaver, particularly when before we go to the Tzion, we do not eat, but we do drink. So although some people have a meaning of fasting on Erev Rosh Hashanah, generally people who are going to the Tzion, to the oil, are not going to be fasting because you're supposed to dafke, yes, drink when you go to a kaver, not to be in a state of fasting. And one of the reasons is because it's a goyisha chukis hagoyim, a goyisha behavior to fast when you go to a tzion. Therefore, we sort of have this pshara. We don't want to eat on the other hand. You're not supposed to just go on a full stomach, so we don't eat, but we do drink. One of the for people that are the minig is that women who are in a state of nida do not go to a beis hachaim. They don't even go to a kivrei tzaddikim under ordinary circumstances, unless they're not in a state of niddah, but they're not currently bleeding actively. What we call in halacha yimei libun, the white days, the clean days, the shiva nakim. So, but during when they're actually menstruating, they do not go to a beis hachaim. Erev Rosh Hashanah, where everybody goes, there's room to be lenient to go to a kaver on Erev Rosh Hashanah, but to stand a distance of 4 amas from the kaver. Talking about getting our new year in order and having everything clean and ready for the upcoming year. Meiser ksafim, giving meiser, tithing our money, giving 10% of our money is an important thing. And some people rely on the fact that they don't give the meiser every single time they get income. They do once in a while, they make a cheshbon. So it's important to make a cheshbon, whether every half a year or every year. And a good time is, at least at the end of the year, to work on all the profit that you had that year. And if there's anything that you made money during the year, after you deduct the business expenses, I'm not talking about deducting personal expenses, but business expenses, so you only look at the actual profit. And from everything together, you lost money here, you made money there, you make a general cheshbon, and you do a tenth of that, at least, meiser, 10% giving to tzedakah. Erev Rosh Hashanah is a good time, because Rosh Hashanah is when everything is decreed and your financial state for the next year will be planned. So let's put things in order on Erev Rosh Hashanah. We make our preparations for Rosh Hashanah by washing, by taking haircuts, by cutting nails, by going to the mikveh, putting on special Shabbos clothing in honor of Rosh Hashanah. We are sure that Hashem will, of the reason we dress up for our day of judgment, because we are sure that Hashem will make sure that our judgment will be in a positive, favorable way. The Rebbe many times brought what it's brought in Tur Shulchan Aruch brings, based on the medrash, that the reason we take haircuts and we take showers and all those things, kimi goy gadol, there's no nation like our nation. Our nation knows the character of our God, of our Eibishter. Normally, a person who has a judgment, he has no idea what's going to happen. We dress up properly, we eat, we drink, we're merry, we know for sure the Eibishter will make us a beautiful year, and therefore we are in a positive state. This is something that the Rebbe addressed many, many times, the simcha that we have, because we know we're going to have a good year. In our preparations for our Rosh Hashanah menu, there's special things that we eat on Rosh Hashanah, special things that we don't eat. So one of the things that we eat is the custom is to eat round challah. The general custom is that we do this all special meals until including Yeshaya and Rab round challah. We have an apple, a sweet apple as part of the menu. Things you have to get ready. Make sure you have them at home before the Rosh Hashanah. A sweet apple, honey, a pomegranate, fish, head of a ram or another head, a new fruit which we're going to be using for the second night of Rosh Hashanah. These are all things we should have ready in stock for the meals of Rosh Hashanah. A new fruit means a fruit that grows in certain seasons. It could grow once a year or twice a year, and you didn't eat it yet during this new season. That's called a new fruit. Now, today's day and age, you could find fruit available throughout the year, but if it's a fruit, even if it's a fruit that you could find, but it's not common, or you could tell that it's a new fruit, then it qualifies as shechiyanu. Talking about honey, it's important to make sure the honey is kosher. Some honey have bee parts that didn't go through a proper filtering to leave out all the remnants from the bees, and that should not be used. When we prepare our foods for Rosh Hashanah, we make sure not to have vinegar or not to have any bitter or sour foods, which have a vinegary or lemon type of taste. That means if the vinegar taste is noticeable and detectable. Sometimes people put in vinegar, but it's not noticeable, that wouldn't be a problem. Some people also have a custom not to eat sharp foods. So interesting, this is a custom some people have, some people don't have. The Rebbe, at some stage, once they brought a chirin to the Rebbe didn't eat, and from then they stopped bringing chirin for the Rebbe Rosh Hashanah, although in the previous years the Rebbe did eat chirin Rosh Hashanah, so Rabbi Groner has reported. Garlic is not a problem, especially if it's a cooked garlic. It's not under the rules of things that we don't eat on Rosh Hashanah. When we're getting ready for the new year, it's important to think about what type of new behavior you're going to take on for this year. It says you're supposed to take on a new zehirus, something you're going to be more careful about, a certain mitzvah you're going to be more beautiful. This mitzvah you're going to beautify more than the past, and a certain loisas is something that you're not allowed to do. You're going to make sure not to be much more careful and cautious. Have to make sure your shofar is prepared. If the shofar has a sticker, it might be a good idea not to have the sticker on the shofar. First of all, because there could be a crack under the sticker. Also, the sticker could have an effect on the sound of the shofar, so it's a good idea to get rid of that. And now we're getting ready for the new year coming in. The Friediger Rebbe writes that from 1 hour before Mincha, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, all the way until Matzah Rosh Hashanah, when we daven Maariv, we should be spending time saying Tillim night and day. We should be careful not to talk any mundane speech, Dibur Choil, Ad Ketzei Ha'achrein, until the most extreme. In an extreme way, we don't talk any mundane language. We even cut down on our sleeping. We increase, do a lot of tefillah v'tachnunim. Any free moment, we're going to be saying Tillim. Take a Tillim with you wherever you're going this year. It's not a Shabbos, we're allowed to carry. Take a Tillim with you all over. And then we said to daven mincha. This is the last tefillah of the year. That's the last tefillah. Spend a lot of time davening this tefillah. Make sure to start davening mincha, not wait till the last minute. Generally, you should never wait till the last minute. Bichlal davening mincha. Certainly not on Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, and certainly not on Erev Rosh Hashanah. You want to daven this mincha with a proper kavanah, appropriately, well before sunset. We should daven this mincha of Erev Rosh Hashanah. The Friediger Rebbe and the Maimer Tafshin Gimel goes at length about what we're supposed to have in mind when we daven this tefillin. He says during this tefillin we make a cheshbon nefesh of everything that we've done during the year, and make sure we make a proper cheshbon nefesh with no exaggerations. Exactly things the way it is, how the Eibishter acted to us, and it was extremely favorable, and how we behaved. and make sure you have a proper charat, a regret from the depth of the heart, and take upon himself they want to accept Hashem's kingdom. That's our last preparation before the coronation of Hashem and Hashanah. One of the tefillahs that we say, one of the brachas that we say in Mincha and Rosh Hashanah, it's interesting to point out because we have a bracha that we say, Baruch Aleinu Hashanah Azayis, Hashem should bless us this year. It has already been said that sometimes you could change the entire year just in a few moments. You could be davening Mincha and Rosh Hashanah, and now ask for a bracha that the new year will be, that the year, meaning the past year, should be a good, beautiful year. The Rabbeim had a meaning that right before Rosh Hashanah they would go and speak to their Rebbetzins. The Rebbe discusses the deeper significance of this, but he also says that's a lesson for everyone. It's not only a conduct of the Rabbeim, the importance of Shalom Bayis and being in good terms with our spouses. Always an important thing. It's important to set the tone for the new year. As holy as you want to be in a Shoshana, there's someone else in your family too, and understand the need to communicate appropriately and respectfully the mitzvahs that a person must love their wife the way they love themselves and respect them even more than they respect themselves. Something to think about before the Shoshana. We cannot give tzedakah on Rosh Hashanah, but before the Shoshana, we give tzedakah for the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. And in addition to that, there's a special fund that the Rebbe started called Keren Hashanah, that the Rebbe spoke about. Keren Hashanah is that we're giving tzedakah throughout the year. But in order to make sure that that tzedakah is given for us throughout the year, we on Erev Rosh Hashanah we donate to the fund money according to the amount of days of this coming year. This coming year is going to be 354 days, almost the gematria of the word Shana. Shana is 355 with a koil Shana, 354 days. And we give tzedakah times 354, that for every single day, tzedakah should be given to us. It's important to give tzedakah before davening. It's important to give tzedakah every day, and sometimes you don't have that ability. This special fund gives the tzedakah for you. The Rebbe said you're putting it in the fund, in the holy hands of the fund. It's on the Rebbe's cheshbon, al das the Rebbe, and you know the tzedakah is being given for you in this Keren Hashanah. We should prepare our candles properly for lichtbenchen. If you have Shabbos clocks, Shabbos zegers, make sure it's set up properly for Yom Tov in the appropriate manner. If you have some people have their fires burning throughout Yom Tov because they want to be able to cook on Yom Tov and you can't turn on a new fire. But that could be a safety issue, and it's important to make sure that there's an open window. There should be a flow of air, a proper flow, an open window nearby. Make sure that your carbon dioxide, everything is all the alarms are all effective and working properly. People that use the Neronim candles have an issue when there's a 2-day Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah is for everyone a 2-day Yom Tov, even in Eretz Yisrael, that sometimes it's hard to light the second time because the disc on the bottom of the wax sticks to the glass, and you're lighting another candle on top of that. Sometimes it'll be very difficult. It's also hard to remove that disc, and there's also halachic problems with removing it on Yom Tov. One of the solutions that people do is they put a tiny bit of water or oil in this glass before they light candles on Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Tov, and this makes sure that it doesn't stick and it'll be easy to remove afterwards. We ben shlicht, we make a special bracha, 2 special brachas, lahadik ner shalim hazikarna shechiyanu. That is our custom. In a lot of places, the bracha is lahadik ner shal Yom Tov. When in Chabad, the custom is to say lahadik ner shalim hazikarna, and then the bracha of shechiyanu. And we ben shlicht the regular time, as on Erev Shabbos, 18 minutes, at least 18 minutes before sunset, for the first night of Rosh Hashanah. If a man is benching lich, then they will say Shechianu at Kiddush, not at lich benching. If a person did not manage to bench lich before Shkia, since it's Yom Tov, you're allowed to bench lich as long as you don't create a new flame from an existing flame. You can bench lich on Yom Tov also. And then we go into the new year, the year of Tafshin Pei Vav. Tafshin Pei Vav every year has a special simon. The simon for Tafshin Pei Vav is Gimel Chaf Hey, and this 3-letter simon for every year gives you a lot of information about the coming year. Gimel tells you which day the Shoshana is. In this case, the Shoshana is on a Tuesday. We're going to be having, for the next 20 years, we're not going to be having again the Shoshana on a Tuesday till the year Tav Vav. So this is an unusual thing. We've had it in the past not so long ago, but from now, for the next 20 years, it's not happening again. I mean, Mashiach will come, might change the whole entire calendar system. We'll have Eidim that will testify when the new moon is. But according to the current calendar system, there's no Rosh Hashanah on a Tuesday until Tav Vav. That's the Gimel. Chaf is telling you a siman how the months operate during the year. So generally, the months, there's a pretty clear system. One month has 29 days, one month 30 days. The only 2 months that are different from year to year are Cheshvan and Kislev. So if you want to work out when something will be in this coming year, you need to know this important detail. What's the first day of the year and how many days each month has? Tishrei is always 30. Like I said, Cheshvan and Kislev are 1 year like this and 1 year like that. So some years are Shana Chasera. The symbol for that is a ches. It's a year with less days than every other year because both Cheshvan and Kislev are 29 days. Some years are Shana Shlema. It's a complete year. Both Cheshvan and Kislev are both 30 days. And then Shana Kisidra means it follows a normal pattern, 29, 30. So Tishrei is always 30. Cheshvan this year is a Kisidra, the letter Chaf. Kisidra in order. Cheshvan is 29. Kislev is 30. From there onwards, every month is 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, 30. And the last letter of the simon of this year is the letter Hey. This simon helps us know when Rosh Chodesh Nisan is. So in case you're not sure if this year is a leap year or a regular year, or it's too hard for you to work out all the mathematical calculation for a full year, you do 6 months at a time. We have another simon when Rosh Chodesh Nisan starts, and that's the third letter. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is going to be on a Thursday, which automatically means the first day of Pesach is going to be on a Thursday. Otherwise, this year is a 354-day year. There's 50 Shabbosim in the year, and it's a regular year, not a leap year. There's this one of the significant things about this year is it's 75 years from when the Rebbe was Makabel the Nesias and Tafshin Yud Aleph, so it's a very unique year for us in the Chabad calendar. And of course, a year that we're looking forward to see the Gula Mitzvah Shlema well before this new year and celebrate the Gula in this upcoming year. One of the things about Rosh Hashanah is there are those that unfortunately smoke. We're not going to go into the medical issues of smoking. There are those that unfortunately smoke on Yom Tov. Yom Tov is a whole set of issues about whether it's okay to smoke on Yom Tov, especially now that we know that it's a health concern. That makes it a halachic concern too. But there's also a particular issue. The Friedrich Rebbe writes that even those that under normal circumstances on Yom Tov would smoke should not smoke on Rosh Hashanah either, even when privately, and they should influence their associates not to smoke on Rosh Hashanah. It's not a Rosh Hashanah thing to go and smoke, even if you would be okay with smoking otherwise. And as we mentioned, we're busy saying Tillim before Ma'ariv, we say Tillim during, after Ma'ariv, we say Tillim, etc. Ma'ariv is davened with extra special kavana. The Rabbein would daven very, very long the first Ma'ariv of the first year, the Ma'ariv of the first night, and again the Friedrich Rebbe, the Maimer, in the same we mentioned before the Maimer, he talks about the special kavana of the last mincha. He also talks about the special kavana of this mitzvah that davening and asking for forgiveness is not enough. We're asking Hashem to please accept us that we could be His servants. Im kevadim, im kavadim, ein l'chatluis. Our eyes are dependent. Please accept us as slaves. So we daven from the depths of the heart. We want to change ourselves completely and be able to meet Hashem the Melech by us becoming Hashem's avadim. There's a bunch of different things that we daven differently on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Seir Smei Tshuva, in Shemon Esrei, there's Achrenu, Michamoicha, Chsoy, V'Sefer, HaMelech HaKadosh, Oisa Hashalim. It's hard to go through the halachas of every one of those things. I will mention that in the Luach Yomi, in the day-to-day halachic guide, we have a chart specifically for mistakes that people can make, and I recommend strongly looking at that chart, especially when you get stuck in the middle of davening and you don't know what you said and what you didn't say, what you're supposed to do right now. So the information is there in a very clear chart way. It's a bit hard to give that over in the shir in each case individually, but a good idea is to daven from a siddur, to daven from a machzer, and focus on think about the meaning of the words, and think about in advance before Shemoneh Esrei which changes you have to make, and usually that prevents a person from making a mistake. After davening, we wish each other Lashana Toiva Tikase V'Sichasim to have it to be inscribed and sealed for New Year. For women, it's Tikase Vi V'Seichasei Mi. And the Chabad custom is particular emphasis not to say it in the plural to a bunch of people. Tikase Vi V'Seichasei Mi. No, every individual in a private Lashon Yachid, individualized bracha Lashana Toiva Tikase V'Seichasim. The Malachim are waiting to hear that Lashana Toiva that comes from the depth of our heart. The first thing after we finish davening the first thing we think about is another year to wish them they should have a beautiful, nice new year. And then we leave shul and go home. When we're leaving shul and going home, there's the issue of carrying. Now, carrying, most people think is only issue on Shabbos. There's no Erev, so you can't carry. Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry, but that's not exactly 100% accurate, because although you're allowed to carry Yom Tov, that's not a license to carry anything you want. There has to be something that there's a tzorech ksas, there's some type of need to carry on Yom Tov. So something that you need for the next day, you're not allowed to carry in the first day, you're not allowed to prepare from one day to another. But also, if you have a machzer, you could keep the machzer in the shul. You have a place it's protected in the shul. There's really no heter to take it home, unless you really need it at home and they have no machzer at home and you need to take this machzer. There are people that are machmer not to take a whole keychain if you don't need all the keys. So talking about carrying, it's important to take into account that it's not just a free license. The Rebbe Rashab saw someone carrying a yantiv, carrying his talis. He told him, well, you carrying a talis and yantiv, that's something that he needed, but he thought it was not appropriate. Why are you carrying your talis? Where are your talis? It's not respectful for yantiv. So important to take that into account. That's about every single yantiv. We get home. So we need to remember that as much as our tefillahs are important, our behavior at home is equally important. And we're very careful not to eat sour foods. We also have to be careful not to have sour faces. Sour faces are equally problematic. It's not a good simon for the future year, a year of a sour face. So make sure at home that we have the proper conduct at home as appropriate for Rosh Hashanah. We're going to make Kiddush on Rosh Hashanah. And in the Kiddush, we have the regular Kiddush, the bracha of Kiddush, and the bracha of Shechiyanu. Now, we're going to be having a rimoin, a pomegranate. A pomegranate could be a Shechiyanu, but we're making Shechiyanu not for Yom Tov. So when you're saying the Shechiyanu of Kiddush for Yom Tov, I'm talking about the first night. The second night is a whole separate issue. We're actually supposed to have a new fruit. First night, you don't need a new fruit, but if it happens to be that the rimoin is a new fruit, the pomegranate is a new fruit, and we eat pomegranate on the first night of Rosh Hashanah, you should have in mind when you're saying Shechiyanu for the pomegranate. If a lady's making Kiddush, she already said Shechiyanu at Lichbenshing, there's no reason for her to say Shechiyanu again. The Shechiyanu of Kiddush, interesting here, is now the women are hearing Kiddush from the husband. They already said Shechiyanu. Should they answer him? Should they not answer him? There's a debate about that. There's definitely no issue if they don't. Some people say they shouldn't answer Amen because that's an interruption. They're hearing Kiddush. Then they're saying Amen on Shechiyanu, which they don't need because they already said Shechiyanu at Lichbenshing. And then they're going to drink from the wine. So that's an extra Amen. So some people are particular not to say that Amen. It's not the end of the world if they do say it, and it's also not the end of the world if you don't say it. We wash and we dip our motzi in honey. This dipping in honey happens from Rosh Hashanah all the way through till after Hashanah Rabbah, and at least on we don't do it during the week, but Shabbos meals and special meals, there's a custom. It's not absolutely necessary unless it's a Yom Tov meal, but the custom is also on Shabbos to have to dip challah in honey. And the Rebbe's minig was that he dipped in honey. He also dipped every time he dipped in honey. He also dipped in salt. So a lot of people just don't have salt on the table. The Rebbe used dipped in honey, and also salt. If somebody doesn't have honey, or they're not allowed to have honey, or it's hard for them to eat honey, they use sugar as a substitute for honey. We eat a hamaitzi. We should eat a full kezayis of hamaitzi because it's supposed to have kiddush b'makim suda. After kiddush, we're supposed to have challah, at least a kezayis. And then we eat the apple and honey. We make a bracha beri priya eitz on the apple. The Chabad custom is we say beri priya eitz. We don't eat the apple yet. We right away say the yehi ratzon right after the beri priya eitz before we eat. So that sounds like a bit of an interruption from beri priya eitz, and we say something before we eat. The Rebbe has a whole letter explaining that dafka, the idea is to say the yehi ratzon sort of as a sequence following the bracha, and only then do we eat the fruit, and we should be daven with a complete heart. Yiratzon fanecha daven for Hashem that you indeed have a proper sweet new year. When we're making ha'etz on the apple, we should have in mind that we're also going to having another ha'etz. This is a pomegranate or rimoin. So it's one bracha. So you should have in mind that the ha'etz of the apple should exempt also the rimoin. The Rebbe was makpid that the kompot that was eaten in the end of the meal, the applesauce or whatever it was that was eaten in the end of the meal, that the beri priya eitz of the apple should cover that also, and he didn't make again on the dessert ha'etz. He left a bit of the apple, and that was the way of having in mind that the apple covers also the kompot at the end of the meal. We eat and rejoice. We don't overeat because it is Rosh Hashanah. We eat fish. Fish is a sign of multiplying. I mentioned we do not eat nuts. We do not eat almonds. According to the Alter Rebbe, the reason almonds are not nuts, but the problem with nuts, according to the Alter Rebbe, is not the word egois, but the idea is that nuts causes coughing. It disturbs our davening. The days that we're focusing on davening and all this coughing and issues that we have as a result of nuts are no good, and that same would apply to almonds also. Another reason that's brought which Alter Rebbe does not bring the egois. The word egois is the same numerical value as the word chet, as the word sinning. So we don't eat eggers because that's associated with chet. Like someone once said, jokingly, we shouldn't do chet on Rosh Hashanah because chet is the same gematria as eggers. and eggers we don't eat. But that's not a simple explanation. A simple explanation is the other way around. We don't eat eggers because it's the same gematria as chet. And as the Kaska famously says, people are very careful not to eat the gematria of chet, but they should be equally careful not to have chet itself. Chet is not only eggers is the gematria of chet, but chet is also the gematria of chet. So sinning is also problematic. The Yehiratzin we say only on the apple. Although we eat a pomegranate to represent the idea that we should have a lot of schusim, like there's a lot of season of pomegranate, we eat the head of a ram representing the ram of Yitzchak, or the head of a sheep, or the head of a fish. The idea of a head generally that shania l'reish we should be to a head and we shouldn't be a tail. But the Yehiratzin we do not say. We only say the Yehiratzin on an apple. I mentioned before about not eating almonds. A lot of people ask about there's a bunch of desserts of foods that are being served, and some of them have peanut butter in it and almond and mixed in almonds. As long as it's not noticeable, and it's not the issue according to us is the idea that it creates problems in coughing and all of that, and brings up in internal issues. And if it's mixed into a cake, it usually wouldn't be a problem. The Rebbe did not say l'chaim at the meals of Rosh Hashanah when he was eating upstairs by the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment, upstairs in 770. The Rebbe said that by the Fabrengen he says, but over here he doesn't want to change the meaning of his father-in-law, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe the Shver, who did not say l'chaim at Rosh Hashanah. So there was an interesting thing. The Rebbe didn't have an issue per se with l'chaim, other than the fact that this was the place of the Friedrich Rebbe who wouldn't say l'chaim at Rosh Hashanah. Then we bench and we make sure not to forget Yal v'Yavai. According to the Alter Rebbe, there's a whole issue with Rosh Hashanah. Some people say you're supposed to fast, and therefore, if you forget Yal V'Yaveh, maybe you don't have to go back again. But the night of Rosh Hashanah, the Alter Rebbe says everybody agrees you're supposed to eat, and therefore you do have to go back. Again, I'm not going to go through the details of what you forgot and what to do when you remember at this stage and at that stage. That's all in the chart of the halachos of mistakes. And at the end of bench, we also add a special tefillah, which used to not be the Chabad custom, but later was printed in the Siddur. That's something that Rabbein would say it quietly. The Rebbe said nowadays we should say it loud. We could say it loud. The Harachman of Yichadish Aleinu, Shon Es Hashana Zesel Tevel Rach Hashem renew us and have a good year and a blessed year. And we retired. We say Krishna Amita. We go to bed, but it's important to go to bed because the next morning we have to wake up, and we're supposed to wake up early. One of the days that we wake up early during the year, there's 5 special days of Hashkama, waking up early, and one of them is Rosh Hashanah. Poskim say that people should wake up well before the break of dawn, which is pretty early, or at least before sunrise. At least, if not before sunrise, then a person should wake up earlier, way earlier, mukdam harbe, much earlier than he normally wakes up. I believe sunrise on Rosh Hashanah is 6:45. Person has a headache, he has difficulties, then maybe he should go to sleep later in the day. But he should try to wake up early. The meaning used to be the Shabbos used to wake up people many hours before the break of dawn. They should already all be in shul, or wake up the little kids that would wake them up also. Nowadays, a lot of people are weak, but at least once a person is up already to go back to sleep, that doesn't make sense to do that on a shana unless a person needs to sleep but have proper kavanah in davening. But generally, it's not a time for sleeping. It's time getting out of bed. You're supposed to be memayit, b'shina, minimize sleeping. The Friedrich Rebbe writes, getting out of bed, saying till and preparing for the holy day. In 770, to start Shachar at 10 o'clock. Safsman Krishma is early. It's about 9:45, if not a few minutes earlier. And therefore, it's important that in order to do the mitzvah of Krishma Bizmana, to say Krishma well before that. We don't, although we're not particular about eating before davening because it's important to eat in order to have the kavanah to be able to daven. In other words, if a person is hungry, according to halacha, if a person is hungry and it could disturb his kavanah, he's allowed to eat before davening. But the Rabbeim took this allowance and made this much more than just an allowance. And they said if a person is hungry in a way that could disturb his kavanah, it's better to eat in order to daven than to daven in order to eat. But before Tkiyah Shofar, we do not eat. Some are lenient to drink. The drinking is not as severe, but if you're waking up that early, you could still drink when it's still before the break of dawn, then you don't have that problem because it's not before Tkiyah Shofar. A lot of women are lenient about this. They don't have the same mitzvah of Tkiyah Shofar. The women have what they're relying to be lenient to eat and drink before Tkiyah Shofar. Now there are people that need to hear Shofar early. They can't come to shul, or they need to eat, and they don't want to eat before Tkiyas. Whatever the reason is, they're not well. They're senior citizens. People are blowing Shofar from Mitzrayim. But there is something about not blowing shofar if it's not within the context of a minyan, if it's privately blowing shofar in the first 3 hours of the day. It's the same amount of time as Savzman Krishma. So Savzman Krishma, like I said, is about 9:44 approximately over here in New York. So until that time, people shouldn't be blowing shofar. And for that matter, davening musaf either. Shachris is okay. Be yechidus. With a minyan is not a problem. Of course, if a person doesn't have a choice and will not be able to hear shofar afterwards, it's better to blow shofar then. Even though, strictly speaking, you're not supposed to blow shofar until at least break of dawn. And in Miftzaim, a person otherwise won't hear shofar. Sorry, until sunrise. In Miftzaim, you can blow shofar already from the break of dawn if the person otherwise won't hear shofar. But ideally, according to halacha, you're supposed to wait till sunrise. And if it's private, not in a minyan, you're supposed to wait until 3 hours in the day. But again, if a person has no choice, they have no choice. Whoever's blowing shofar, the Fridi Rebbe instructed they should learn a special maimer that's printed in Alter Rebbe Siddur about the kavanas of Tkiyah shofar. And that maimer should not be learned before Rosh Hashanah, it should be learned on the morning of Rosh Hashanah. I'm assuming that applies to anybody that does mitzvah shofar, so he becomes the Baal Tekeh, so he should learn that maimer too. Obviously, learning the maimer means, in addition to knowing all the halachas of shofar, there's a whole range of halachas to make sure to know those halachas properly. And then again, in davening, there's things that we add by day in Shachris. Among the other things that we add is Shir Hamalas Mimamakim, which we're going to be adding throughout the Seres and Tshuva, etc. And we daven a proper Shachris. The Mezritch Maggid writes a lot of people focus on the Shemoneh Esrei, or the special piyutim, the special tefillas of Rosh Hashanah. The regular, quote-unquote, boring tefillas, karbanos in the morning, psukkah de zimra, birchas krishma. So the Mezritch Maggid, the Maggid says, those are where you should put in your focus. Of course, Shemoneh Esrei is the highlight. That's when you're coming into the king. But you can't get into the king if you're not going to the outer. You didn't get the keys to the outer rooms. You're not going to get into the inner rooms. You want to remove all the prosecutors. Put an effort in your psukkah, the zimra, and birchas krishma, daven those things properly on Rosh Hashanah. After we finish Shemoneh Esrei, Shemoneh Esrei includes, of course, the Chazaras Hashatz. Svarim talk about the fact that people get very inspired by certain piyutim, but they're not paying attention to the chazan. Chazaras Hashatz is supposed to listen to the chazan. After Shemoneh Esrei, is Kriyas HaTorah. Now, during Kriyas HaTorah, we say 3 times Yud Gimel Midos. Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachem V'Chanan. Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachem V'Chanan is a feature of our tefillas to Hashem. We say it every day. We focus on it during Slichas. We focus on it a lot in Yom Kippur. Those are special attributes of mercy that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu. There won't be a Beis HaMikdash. There won't be Karbanos. There won't be Moshe Rabbeinu to daven for us. You didn't do the wrong thing. There will always be something that will never turn back empty-handed. The school of Yud Gimel Serachim, you daven to Hashem and you have a mind. It's not just enough saying the words. You're supposed to think about the meaning of the words and know the meaning that Hashem is a Keil, Racham, V'Chanan, is compassionate and forgiving. When we say those words, we evoke divine mercy from above, in according to Chassidus, L'mayla Me'eshtalshus, the very, very high levels. And we do say it. One of the times we say that is when we open our Kodesh on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, other Yom Tovim. 3 times we're saying it on Rosh Hashanah when we open our Kodesh in order to bring down the special Rachman from Hashem. And then we have Kriyas HaTorah, and afterwards comes Tkiyah Shofar. The Alter Rebbe writes in the Siddur that before Tkiyah Shofar, Yachin Atzmei L'Tkoyah B'Shofar. You should prepare yourself to blow shofar. He doesn't say what that means. How do you prepare yourself? What does this mean? So everybody prepares himself in their own way. The Rebbe explains, in addition to the fact that everybody has their type of achana, one person is inspired from this, and one person is inspired just from Tillim, from Chassidus, whatever. But the Alter Rebbe doesn't say, because the idea is a general preparation. It's not a specific detail. This is the preparation higher than any prat and any specific aspect, any specific detail. It's a general devotion, dedication to Hashem. Of course, we should have in mind that we're going to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Shofar. There's a letter of the Baal Shem Tov that he wrote to his student, the Mezritch Maggid, that before Tkiyas, both days of Rosh Hashanah, I want you to think about be mitzayir, imagining in your mind the way I look. And Chassidim have taken that as an idea, as part of the shuvas to think about the Rebbe. We make these 2 brachas that are said on Shofar, L'shmoy Kol Shofar Shachiyanu. We hear the brachas, we don't say Baruch Hu L'shmoy, we answer Amen. If a person came late and they didn't say the brachas, they could say the brachas during any of those breaks between the different Siddharim orders of Tkiyas, not during Shtul Shemoneh Esrei, obviously. The Baal Tekeh blows with the shofar, ideally, if he can, on the right side of his mouth. Lefties should blow on the left side of the mouth, but righties on the right side of the mouth, and that's how they disturb the Satan. They put the shofar should be in such a way that it's tilted upwards, the opening of the shofar. And there's 30, at this stage, the most critical part is to hear the 30 different blasts of shofar from the beginning to the end, and every one of them is required to be heard, including children that are the age of chinuch should be hearing the shofar. The custom is to bring children to the shofar if it's a child that disturbs, and he's not the age of chinuch, and he's coming into the men's section, the men are mechuyev to hear tkiyas, and the disturbs, the Alter Rebbe says, do not bring them there because they're going to be disturbing tkiyas. Some people have hearing aids with batteries, and they need to remove them before tkiyas shofar. So now, if they won't be able to hear without hearing aids, they could either stand very close to the Baltikea, they could have a private tkiyas shofar setting where they hear from someone that blows very, very loud, or some people can hear when they blow themselves and they know how to blow. They can blow for themselves without the hearing aid. If they can hear, they can blow with a bracha. If they can hear at all without a hearing aid, if they blow, that's fine, but they should not be making a bracha. The voices of the shofar, it doesn't make a difference if it's a beautiful, powerful voice or not such a powerful voice. Any voice is fine as long as you're following the proper size. There's a certain amount of time the tkiyah is supposed to take and how long the shvarim and turah. Again, I'm not going to go through all those details, but I will mention just one general rule that sometimes people blow and nothing's coming out. It's plain ear. It's not a sound. Plain ear is not tkiyah shofar. That doesn't count. And important that could not be a proper size of tkiyah of the tkiyah of the sound because part of it was not done properly. We don't talk until the tkiyas are finished, and we actually don't not only until the tkiyas are finished, until the whole entire tkiyas of the entire davening, including what's called tkiyas demuma, tkiyas that's happening during musaf, until the very end, unless we're talking of something associated with davening, with tkiyas, with tefillas, etc. And when tkiyas shofar is happening, in the Siddur it says Yizvada Balachish, you should confess quietly. The Friedi Rebbe writes that Tkiyas shofar, Yizvada Balachish means it's a different form of video, a different form of confession. This confession quietly is a form that Hashem changed. You're asking Hashem, you want to change completely from one mohus to another mohus, become a different person. This is the end result of the whole entire tshuva that we start from Rosh Chodesh El. This is a stage of a child yearning to reach their father, to Gagum. That's the Yizvada Balachash over here. Chassidim, like I mentioned earlier, used to say that part of the Yizvada Balachash is thinking about the Rebbe. There's a concept according to Kabbalah to see, to look at the Baltikea when he finishes the Tkiyas. The Rebbe would actually do a turnaround at some stage, turn around so everybody should be able to see the Rebbe, to look at the Baltikea. And then we got ready for davening Musaf. Musaf, you need to have proper kavanah. It's a long davening. It's long bekamus, and it's also long beiches. Not only quantitatively, but qualitatively as well. Make sure you understand what you're saying. Some poskim say that in the first bracha of Musaf, the first of the middle bracha, the bracha of Malchus, in other words, the fourth bracha. There's a total of 9 brachas in Musaf, first 3 as always, and then there's 3 additional brachas. First of those 3 bracha of Malchus is about crowning Hashem. Kavana is ma'akiv. If you don't have kavana, you don't know what you're doing. You're supposed to be accepting Hashem as your king. How can you accept him as king? You don't even know what you're doing right now. So kavana is very, very important. And during the silent Shemoneh Esrei, there's also tkiyas. At least that's what's done in Hasidic circles, not amongst non-Hasidim, but among Hasidim and Sfardim, we make sure to hear at least 100 blasts, and by us it's 130. And we do also tkiyas during the silent Shemoneh Esrei. But the problem is you're in the middle of davening Shemoneh Esrei and they're blowing tkiyas. So wherever you are, stop where you are. You're davening shorter pace, a longer pace. You usually make some type of motion that they're going to be blowing tkiyas. Stop where you are and listen to the tkiyas at whatever stage you're up to. Then comes Chazor Sashatz with more Tkiyah Shofar, and there's a Birchas Kohanim. It's important to realize that there's a lot of different Kohanim, and they might have different paces. When the last Kohen finishes his bracha, Yivrech Hashem v'yishmerecha, after the word v'yishmerecha is when you're supposed to answer Amen. You're supposed to be facing the Kohanim and not supposed to be behind the Kohanim. And you're not supposed to turning in other directions. The only way to do proper Nesi's Kapayim to get the bracha on the Kohanim is when you panim connected panim, when your face is facing their face. So some people are sitting by Birchas Kohanim under a talus, all wrapped nicely, and they're facing the wrong direction, and that's a serious issue with Birchas Kohanim. After duchening, do not say Shikoyach Kohen. Generally, you shouldn't be saying it until after Kaddish is over. Over here, anyhow, we don't talk because of Tkiyah Shofar until Tkiyahs are over. And then we do in the end of davening another 30 blasts just to confuse us something a bit more. But stamazoi, blowing for nothing, you're not allowed to blow shofar on a Hashanah. Someone was asking me about an old age home they were going, and they warned them they're not going to blow, and they have to go to each person individually blow. I don't know if it was a hospital, old age home, I don't remember. And if they're not going to a particular guy that's there, who's registered as a Jew, but they happen to know is not Jewish, and they don't blow for him, they're not going to let them blow for anybody else. And the person thought it's okay, so I'll blow for him. But never mind the issues of making the person think that he's Jewish when he really isn't. But I'm not talking about that concept. You're not allowed to blow shofar for nothing. Blowing for a guy is blowing for nothing. You're not allowed to do that. That's a serious issue. Anyhow, well, we've given him some solutions for that. We go home and we eat a meal, we make kiddush, eat a meal, and again, we don't fill ourselves to the top. It's a time to have still the Yiras Hashem in our face. It is Rosh Hashanah. Meal sometimes lead to idle talk. Idle talk is not permissible. This shouldn't be done in Rosh Hashanah. We don't overeat. We eat less than we normally eat. And the minig is not to sleep by day, because the person sleeps in Rosh Hashanah, then it's an indication associated with his mazel to be a sleepy mazel. But like the Alter Rebbe writes, if you're sitting and wasting your time, it's the same exact thing as sleeping. So what are you accomplishing? There might be something more with sleeping, because at least you're accomplishing something. So it's not a time to waste time. I mentioned earlier that you're not supposed to blow shofar unnecessarily more than you're supposed to, or more than what the minig is. A child, you're allowed to have a child is allowed to blow shofar, even after he heard tkiyas. It's part of his chinuch of education to doing mitzvahs. Throughout the day, chassidim are going on mitzvah shofar and helping out other people blow shofar. Somebody who's going to do mitzvah shofar, so if there's someone over there that's being yotzer right now, that person should make the bracha. If a person doesn't know how to make the bracha, someone else can make the bracha for him, even though the person who's making the bracha for the other person was already yotzer. So I heard tkiyas in shul, I'll be making a bracha for someone else on the street who doesn't know how to make a bracha himself. But a man cannot make who is yotzer the mitzvah cannot make a bracha for a woman. It's not a regular a mitzvah, the obligatory mitzvah for a woman to hear shofar. Therefore, a man cannot make a bracha for a woman. It's important that a bracha that's going against the shofar should be an adult. An adult, according to Torah, means if he has already signs of maturity. And every person that belongs shofar should hear those 30 blasts of tkiya, shvarim, trua, tkiya 3 times, and tkiya, shvarim, tkiya 3 times, and tkiya, trua, tkiya 3 times. Less than that doesn't really count regularly as shofar. You can blow shofar throughout the day. After sunset, you shouldn't be making a bracha anymore. After nightfall, there's really no point in blowing anymore. There's mincha, and before shkia, after mincha, but still before sunset, we're supposed to be saying tashlich and a place of water. If somebody didn't manage to say it before shkia, then they could say it after sunset. But the emes is, it might be better to say it on the second day before sunset than saying it on the first day after sunset, because the real time is supposed to be before sunset. Poskim say that women should not go for tashlich in places where there are men, chas v'shalom, especially in such a holy day. Creating a mix of men and women is against halacha and against Yiras Shamayim, and therefore, as much as important tashlich is, they should go to a place where it's designated specifically for women. When we are finished the day, we want to prepare for the next day. Now, prepare from one day Yom Tov to the next. You have to wait until it's nightfall, which over here is a bit after 7:30. I think 7:32. You can't even have a goy preparing for you from one day to the next. And if you want to take out something from the freezer and let it defrost, all these things could be a problem because you have to wait till it's the night of the second day. And if you're cooking for the first day, you have to make sure that all the food you're cooking for the first day is edible on the first day before sunset. Halacha tells us that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are different than any other 2 days Yom Tov. The normal 2 days Yom Tov are considered 2 separate days, which is a dal, which is the main day. The 2 days Yom Tov are considered one kedusha, one long kedusha, and one long day, which has a lot of some halachic ramifications. Chassidus explains the idea that it's one long day means it's always day. It's one long day. That means there's no night. That means the idea that there's no concealment and no darkness. And that's part of the reason that we don't sleep, because there's no night. So while we're sleeping, it's just daytime. So that's why we cut that, at least cut down our sleep. Sidis also explains that when we take 2 days and we turn into one day, that means we're able to squeeze in a lot more. We take l'mayla mazman above time and bring it to time. And that's part of the idea where every single hour of Rosh Hashanah is precious. There's 48 hours of Rosh Hashanah. Every one of those hours has so much in it. Has double the amount. And during those 48 hours, we say our Tehillim, and we transform the Memches hours, 48 hours, transform the Chaim, also equals 48, the heat of Klippa, the natural heat, and it transforms it into kosher, godly heat of Torah, heat of Tefillah, heat of Midas Tevis. There's Ma'ariv, the second night of Rosh Hashanah, and there's Lichbenchen. Lichbenchen has to wait until it's already nighttime, as we mentioned, it's 7:32, and sometimes we don't have candles, we don't have fire, and we want to take our candles to someone else that has fire. We can't create a new fire in Yom Tov, but you're not allowed to take a candle, take it to a place where there's wind, because the candles might go out. That's a problem on Yom Tov. When you're lighting with a match, taking and transferring fire from one candle to another, you're not allowed to extinguish the match. You're supposed to put it down, let it go out on its own. When women are benching licht on Rosh Hashanah, they make the second night as well. But for the second night, it's a question if you really need a shechianu. As mentioned earlier, it's really like one day. If it's really like one day, maybe it doesn't require shechianu. Every Yom Tov, it's a question whether the first day is Yom Tov or the second day. So each one has its own shechianu. On a Shoshana, it's a big machlekes if you make shechianu again for the second night, for Kiddush, the lich benching, and the same question for the Baal Takeh, the second day for Tkiyah Shofar. So what we do is we avoid the problem by having a new food for Kiddush, and women wear a new garment for Shechianu. Or, if they're not going to be wearing a new garment, at least there's a new food which is going to be eaten later by Kiddush. So when they're benching lich, they say to Shechianu, they look at the new fruit, and they make their lich benching ramish, mamish, in close proximity to Kiddush, and right after that will be Kiddush when they'll eat the fruit. If there's no new fruit, you still can say Shechianu regardless. That applies to Kiddush, that applies to lich benching, but best, the right thing is to have a new fruit. Talking about Kiddush with the Shechianu, so when you're saying the Shechianu of Kiddush, you must be looking at the new fruit. Again, if you don't have a new fruit, you say Shechianu either way. But the Shechianu is not only on the fruit, the Shechianu is for the Yom Tov. You have a Simcha Sayom Tov, but you also have the Simcha associated with the fruit. And over here, we're going to be eating this new fruit right after Kiddush, before we wash. The first night we had an apple and honey after we washed. That's in the beginning of the meal. We washed, we made Kiddush, we washed, we had a kazayis of bread, and then we had an apple and honey. On the second night, the new fruit is for the Shechiyanu. Shechiyanu was part of Kiddush. We don't want to make an interruption between the Shechiyanu and eating the new fruit. So right after Kiddush, before we wash, we're going to be eating the new fruit. We eat a proper shir, and the Chabad custom is particularly to eat a full shir and make a bracha achreina, an after blessing on this new fruit, the appropriate after blessing, but only on the fruit. We don't make a bracha achreina on the wine. The bracha for the wine, the ala gefen for the wine is covered with benching. The woman who bench shechianu by lich benchen, and they had in mind the fruit, are not going to make now a new shechianu when they eat the fruit. They already made that shechianu for the fruit during lich benchen. And everybody in the family, even those that didn't make Kiddush, the customers, they also have partake from this new fruit, and they eat it for a good simmer for the new year. And otherwise, we have the regular meal of Rosh Hashanah, we bench, go to sleep, and the next morning wake up again for the next second day of Rosh Hashanah. The Rabbeim had a meaning that on the Rosh Hashanah, particularly on the second day, they would say Yisker. In the Smachza, we don't have Yisker only on Yom Kippur, but the Rabbeim privately said Yisker. The Rebbe said that he's mentioning this. People should decide on their own if they want to follow this meaning or not follow. The Rebbe is not telling us what to do, but he just mentioned that people should know that meaning that the Rebbeim said Shechianu, Yisker, sorry, on Rosh Hashanah. During Ki Shofar, the Baal Takeh is going to have a new garment while he says Shechianu, because of the question of Shechianu on the second day. And otherwise, davening is all the same as regular mitzvah shofar. And of course, now when it comes to second day, it becomes a bit harder to maintain that strong Rosh Hashanah feeling for 48 hours straight. Second day, towards then, it becomes harder. In Sfarim, it says that the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Dina Kashya, the difficult judgment. And the second day, things get a bit looser. There's Dina Raf, it is a loose judgment. But people in their behavior also sometimes become looser. It's important to maintain that spirit of not talking about B'Telem all the way until the end of Rosh Hashanah. The meaning is we have a fabrenga, something that the Rebbe introduced. We wash our hands before Shkia. We eat bread, at least a kabeh of bread. We sing the Nigun of the Rabbeim. We mention the names of the Rabbeim. Each nigun that we sing from the Rabbeim, we say which Rebbe this was. And we have a proper meal, and the Rebbe would give that kosher bracha. When we washing now, although it's not one of the required meals of Yom Tov, every time you wash on Yom Tov, you should be machmer to have lechem mishnah. If it's many times you're washing for each meal, a lechem mishnah. If you don't have, okay, so at least when you're eating even one challah, it should be a whole challah, not a cut up challah. But ideally, you should have a proper lechem mishnah. And we have this special fabrengen. We continue, and if it continues into the night, you will be saying Yal V'Yavi, even though it's already long time ago, Matzah Rosh Hashanah. It goes after the beginning of the meal. You had the chiyuv of benching in Rosh Hashanah at the beginning of the meal. When you started, it was Rosh Hashanah. So even though your benching is happening when it's already late at night, you don't lose that chiyuv, and you still say Yal V'Yavi in benching. The Rebbe asked that we should connect the beginning of Rosh Hashanah with the end of Rosh Hashanah. Sorry, we should connect Rosh Hashanah with Matzah Rosh Hashanah through Chassidus. So you want to attach Rosh Hashanah with the days afterwards with Chassidus. And everybody, so the Rebbe suggested everybody should do this. The Rabbeim spoke about it. The Rebbe suggested everybody should do this, follow the path of our Rabbeim, and this will bring us a light of Chassidus throughout the year, and I'll bring that all the way until here, Lamata Mata. And then as Matziyamta, when you daven Mayim, it's important not to forget the special sections of davening. This is Achrenu L'chaim, Micha Moicha, HaMelech HaKadosh, after Chanan Tanu, because it's Matziyamta. HaMelech HaMishpat, which was not said on Rosh Hashanah, only in Aseres Mechuvah. Chsoiv L'chaim, of a sefer, and then at the end Oisa Hashalom. And again, those who forget, there's the rules associated, which there's a chart about that. We make a regular Havdalah, but we don't make a bracha on B'samim, we don't make on the candle, we don't say V'yidin Lecha, but otherwise it's a regular Havdalah, and that night is the night of Tzom Gedalia, which it's a good idea to eat by night, because there's a fast upcoming day. Hopefully Mashiach will be in the fast will be transformed into a Yom Tov. If you want to eat before the break of dawn, you should stipulate before you go to sleep that you want to be able to eat before the break of dawn. You're supposed to, because if a person slept a shinas kva, then it's considered as though almost as though the fast started. I'll share just a brief story that my grandfather was in Munkach, in the city of the Munkach Rebbe, where the Minchas Elazar was. It was on the day of Tzom Gedal, the day after Rosh Hashanah. And the Minchas Elazar came into shul, and they had a bunch of minyanim. The Munkach Rebbe himself davened early in the morning. This was a late minyan, and they were davening there. And it was a middle of Chazar Sashatz, and the Munkach Rebbe started asking, did they say Anenu? Did the Chazan say Anenu in Chazar Sashatz that we say on a fast day? Nobody knew the answer, and he started screaming, Atug noch Rosh Hashanah. It's a day after Rosh Hashanah, and people don't even know what happened if they said Anenu. But he was screaming in such a way that it sounded like he's screaming at my grandfather, who was right next to him. He was a bacher. Yeah, he wasn't screaming at him. He was screaming at the crowd. How can it be? Nobody knows the answer. They said Anenu. But because he was screaming right next to my grandfather, he decided he wants to appease him and muster the fast. He called him over to his house to eat, to break the fast in his house. But the message of the story that I want to bring out is the idea that we should take the spirit of Rosh Hashanah and remember and be much more conscious of everything we're doing. We're sure that Yeshua is going to give us a ksiva tova. We're sure we're going to have a shnaz geula of Yeshua. There's going to be a prosperous year, a year tafshin pevav shnas pru, a year which will multiply and be prosperous, and everything will be the best way. We'll finish the year, the current year, with all the negative things of this year. We'll start only a year of geula, simcha la'arsecha, v'sasen le'irecha, l'shana tova tikasem v'sichasem, for all the people that are listening over here, for all of Klal Yisrael, and a year of geula, hamitis v'ashlema. May that take place. Take it from Yad Mamash, Kol Tov.